Processed foods can get a bad rap. When foods are washed, bagged, canned, or boxed, they're all considered processed, but still have lots of vitamins and minerals. Let's take a look at 3 surprisingly healthy processed foods that are actually good for you. Fortified cereals, which have vitamins and minerals added, can be a great choice. Look for those that are low in sugar, less than 6 grams, with 3 grams of fiber or more. And some give you a whole day's worth of certain vitamins and minerals, like B12 and niacin. Some processed plant proteins are super healthy, like soy-based veggie burgers or veggie chicken. Soy is a high-quality protein and replaces animal products in milk, burgers, and veggie chicken strips. If you're watching your salt intake, make sure to read the label because these products can have a little or a lot. Canned beans are full of vitamins, protein, and fiber. They're ready to use in any recipe, from soups and stews to quesadillas. Adding these nutrient powerhouses to your diet couldn't be easier. Look for reduced salt versions, or you can cut down on sodium by rinsing them first. And remember, processed doesn't necessarily mean bad. It can be more convenient, and that's good if it means you're going to eat healthier. For more health tips, go to aarp.org/health.
Hello, my name is Sonia Gibbons-Reed, and I am the State and Community Engagement Analyst for AARP Illinois. AARP, a nonprofit, nonpartisan member organization, has been working to promote the health and well-being of older Americans for more than 60 years. AARP is proud to represent all those who are 50 plus in Illinois and our 1.7 million members, and we thank you for the opportunity to be your wise friend and fierce defender. Our mission is to enhance the quality of life for all as we age, leading positive social change and delivering value to members through advocacy, service, and information. Did you know an overall healthy diet is best, but a few foods stand out for their brain health benefits? These standouts, plus a few boosters, can keep you healthy as nutritional needs change with age. Berries, dark green leafy vegetables, seafood, nuts and seeds, cottage cheese, beans, water, and avocados. We are hopeful today's cooking demonstration is helpful in your cooking journey. Please enjoy today's cooking class, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Hey there, AARP fans. Chef Amanda coming to you from Morton, Illinois, where, as per usual, we're celebrating our caregivers by giving easy-to-do recipes at our home here, and these are recipes that are meant to make people feel good, not only about cooking the recipes, but also about sharing them with those that they love. So today we're going to head over to Germany, where we'll be making homemade pork Schnitzel, and to go along with that, we're going to make some lemon herb Spaetzle. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, I bought a pork tenderloin just from the store, and this one here happens to be pre-seasoned. That is a personal option that you can go with. You can season your own, or you can buy them plain. I do like to use a pork tenderloin for this, and not a pork loin, and those are a little bit different. So I've got about 3 cuts here. Typically I can get 6 pretty nice cuts out of my loin, maybe even 7. Ooh, lost my knife. So I'm going to go ahead and do about a 1-inch cut. You could also have chops one night and schnitzel another if you didn't want to use your whole pork tenderloin for the same dinner. After we've got these cut nicely, I'm going to give them a little bit of a pound with the flat side of a meat mallet. So I've got a piece of saran wrap ready to go over here. I'm just going to place that over the top of my pork. Hopefully you can see. I'll move a few things out of the way here. There we go. And I'm going to use the flat side of the mallet, which we like to use for pounding pork tenderloin and chicken. That way it doesn't beat it up too much. Usually if I'm using the teethy, pointy side, I'm using that for beef. And we're just going to give it a little pound. And thinner the better when making schnitzel. And in order to get that nice and even, I'm pounding from the center and moving my way up. And we'll give it one more run. And I think that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to put that on my parchment lined sheet pan. And I'm just going to do 3 of these today, just to spare you from all of the hardcore banging in the video here. My goal is to get all of my schnitzels nice and evenly pounded. That way they cook up at about the same rate in the pan once I get to the breading stage and into the skillet. You'll notice I didn't remove the piece of fat from the pork tenderloin. It's a pretty lean meat, pork tenderloin, so we want to keep some of the fat intact. A lot of people really like the flavor that that brings. All right, that looks pretty good. So we've got 3 really nice thin pieces of schnitzel here. Get rid of these others. And next we're going to move on to the breading station. So over here I've got what's going to become my standard breading station. I've got a little flour in one bowl. I've got some eggs that I'm going to crack and whisk and season in my second bowl. And in my third bowl, we've got our favorite breadcrumbs, which is panko Japanese breadcrumbs. You could also buy like a seasoned Italian breadcrumbs, and those would work well for this application as well. I really love the panko because it's extra crispy, so it really gives a nice texture to the schnitzel. We're going to season up our flour first with a little bit of Italian seasoning, which we've also mixed with a little bit of garlic powder. I'm going to get rid of one of my gloves so I don't cross-contaminate. And I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper to the party there. Next, I'm going to crack my eggs. I like to remove my eggs from the bowl and crack swiftly on the counter so that I don't push eggshells into the egg after cracking them, which is a common hazard of cracking eggs on the side of the bowl. So we like to do that on a flat surface. Give a quick little wipe here. And I'm going to whisk, whisk, whisk. I'm going to add a little salt and pepper to that party as well. And I like to season all 3 layers of my standard breading procedure. So if low sodium is what you need to do, then a little bit less salt in each dish is fine. But we like to have layers that are seasoned all the way. Excuse me, that pepper got me. All right, so now I've got my flour with my seasonings in there. You want to be able to see those seasonings, that way it really comes through. Then I've got my eggs. And I'm going to give my breadcrumbs a little whisk with that salt and pepper as well. All right, and now we're ready to get breading. First thing I'm going to do is take my first piece of schnitzel, and if you wanted even smaller pieces, you could cut those in half. But we're going to keep them nice and traditional. Now, for a traditional schnitzel, you probably wouldn't buy a pre-marinated pork loin, but I just really love the intense extra flavor that it gives. So I'm going into the flour, then into my egg. Use my nice little fork here to do most of that work for me. And then over and into the breading. This way I don't have to get too much egg onto my hand, which makes it a little bit easier to work. And I'm really pressing that breading into the schnitzel. That way we get extra crispy exterior. And that looks just absolutely gorgeous. Into the flour, pressing that. And into the egg. Getting some nice coverage there. Lifting and over. All right, and one last one. You could also freeze these at these steps, at this step right here, because as we know, being a caregiver doesn't always work on our time. We're kind of on other people's time sometimes. So this is a great meal to make ahead, freeze a few of them, and you can cook them later. Especially making 6 to 7 schnitzels, probably wouldn't need them all in one night. All right, now that I've got those breaded, we can get rid of these. We'll work on the rest of that pork later. And the next thing I'm going to do is fire up my skillet over here. I'm using a cast iron skillet. I like the way it transfers heat. And I've got some tongs to work off of as well. Let me get this lemon out of the way. We'll need that a little bit later. All right, and then into the skillet here, I'm going to add some butter and some extra virgin olive oil. So it looks like we're going to have a little bit of oil first. Oh, olive oil. Grab that. Yep, so we're going to do 4 tablespoons of olive oil. Okay, and we're going to do 4 tablespoons of butter. We like to do butter and oil in the pan. That way we can get a little bit higher temp cooking out of our fat. Basically, butter is going to burn if you cook it at too high of a temperature. So adding a little bit of oil to the party allows us to use the butter to fry at a higher temperature. And then we're going to put a little thyme in here just to flavor this up. Putting the whole thyme sprig in. And this is doing a couple things here. First of all, it's going to give us some fried thyme for our garnish at the end. But in addition to that, it is actually flavoring the fat, so our butter and our olive oil mix here, and giving it a little bit more flavor. So I'm just rolling that around a little bit. You can start to hear it sizzle and pop. We don't want our butter to get too brown here. I added all of my oil and butter to the pan. If you're going to do this in batches and do 7 tenderloins, you might want to split or 7 pieces of schnitzel, or 6, however many you get. You might want to split your butter and your oil in half. That way you can add it in the second round. Add the second half in the second round. All right, so we're going to remove that thyme sprig out of there now. We're going to save that for a little bit later. Now I'm going to wait for that sizzle, which I'm hearing, and I'm going to lay my schnitzel into the pan. And I feel like you can do 3 to 4 schnitzels at a time, depending on the size of your pan. We've got a pretty nice big cast iron here. And this is such a thin cut of meat, it's really not going to take too long to cook. So what we're looking for here is a nice and golden brown, crispy texture on the outside of our breadcrumbs, which we're only going to achieve if our oil and our fat is bubbling around the pork like it is here. And then we're going to wait to flip until that's perfectly golden brown, just the way we want it. So I've got my temperature up pretty high right now, but as I start to see the butter heat up a little bit more and a little bit more, I'm going to start to turn my heat down. That way I don't run the risk of burning the milk solids in my butter or cooking the exterior of my pork too dark before the inside is done. And we're shooting for an internal temperature here of 145 degrees, safe temp for eating pork chops. Ooh, this one's starting to look quite nice. It smells really good in here instantly. And now I can start to see the butter and the oil's starting to turn a little bit brown, which is exactly what I want. So I'm turning my heat down so that it doesn't turn to black. And I'll show off what we've got going on here. Look at that nice color. So for me, that's really good. That's what I like to see. So I'm going to give it a little bit of a flip. You can see that my other ones are also starting to look nice and golden crispy. And while I get my other pork pounded out and going in the pan, we're going to turn over here to Chef Amy, and we're going to see what she's got going on with the Spaetzle. All right. You want to take over this position here, Amy, or where do you want to start? You want to go there?
I'll go right here.
Okay, perfect.
All right. So just like Chef Amanda said, I'm Amy, and we're going to be making Spaetzle. Spaetzle is basically a German noodle. It's similar to an egg noodle, and it only requires a few ingredients, 4 of them to be exact. So I've got in a bowl some flour, regular all-purpose flour. I've got eggs that I've beaten. I have salt. And I have milk. And that's the entire dough. So I'm going to go ahead and give that a nice little whisk. And this dough is going to be very sticky. That's a normal characteristic of this noodle. And the unique thing about the Spaetzle is kind of its shape. They're these little irregular squiggly noodles. And you can buy an actual Spaetzle extruder, which we'll show you here in just a minute. We had one brought from Germany by a friend of ours. So we have that exact tool. However, let me be very clear, you don't need one. You can use anything with holes just about to make this pasta. So I'm just incorporating all this dough, making sure that my flour is all absorbed. Now I'm going to get my water boiling. It's been simmering. So like I said, just 4 ingredients for this dough. And this is how sticky it should be. All right, so that's it. That was the whole dough. Now, this is our Spaetzle maker. Again, it came all the way from Germany. Some of you out there might recognize this and say, hey, wait a minute, Amy, that's a ricer for potatoes. Well, they're right. You could use a ricer as well. If you don't have that, you could use this. You could use the wide or large blade from a box grater. Again, anything with holes will do. This is a perforated pan, and it works very, very well. So I think we're going to kind of get the most bang for our buck with all those holes. So we'll probably just use this, but I wanted to show you all the different tools that you could. And each different size hole is going to give you a different thickness of noodle, but one way or the other, you have a noodle nonetheless. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of the dough, and I'm going to make sure that I've got a spatula or something to push the dough through. So I'm going to take a mound of my dough. I'm going to put it right on top of the pan. And I'm going to go ahead and use this. It's not hot yet. It will be. And I'm going to start pushing it through so that these individual little noodles drop into the water. And we'll give you a visual of that in just a minute here. But all I'm doing is pushing this dough through the holes of whatever apparatus I have, and they're dropping into the boiling water below. I'm almost done. Once I do, I'll lift up that pan, and these noodles are only going to take a couple of minutes to cook, and they are so user-friendly that they will actually tell you when they're done. They float. So once you see them coming to the surface and floating, there we go, which some of them already are. I'm going to go ahead and scrape the underside of my pan because I've got a lot of hangers on there. I'm going to set this off to the side. And now we can see those noodles, those tiny little noodles, just cooking away in that water. Like I said, maybe about 2 minutes. And again, they will float to the top. And what I'm going to do is I've got kind of a landing zone over here. I've got some parchment paper to lay the noodles out on, and I'm going to reach for some spray. You could use butter or spray oil. And I'm going to spray my parchment paper so that they don't stick. I think these are done. I'm going to take a slotted spoon, or this is called a spider, and I'm going to go ahead and just drag these out. I don't want to drain my pasta water because I've got another batch to do, and I don't want to wait to have another pot of water come up to a boil. I'm just going to use the same water that I used this first time. And that is exactly how easy and how fast you can make Spaetzle, which is the perfect accompaniment to our Schnitzel. Say that 5 times fast. Are you ready to jump in, Chef?
I'm ready, absolutely. Okay. All right, welcome back. So I have spent a little bit more time frying up our Schnitzel. You can see that we've got a beautiful golden brown crust going on all sides to ensure maximum crispiness. If your oil is getting a little bit too hot and your Schnitzel's not quite the color that you want and you're afraid that you might brown the bits in the pan, you can pull your Schnitzel out as long as it has a little bit of dark golden color on top, and you could finish it in the oven. So that's an option, but that wasn't really necessary for us today. All right, next we're gonna make a little mushroom gravy. So I'm gonna get all my veggies ready here. I've already cleaned off most of my mushrooms. Our favorite process for that is just to simply wipe them with a dampened towel, just to get any residual dirt off. If you rinse your mushrooms underneath running water, then you're gonna have a watery sauce or gravy. So we try to avoid that. Next step in cutting here is going to be to just take the bottom part of each stem off. I just find that a little bit more savory with the mushrooms. And then we're going to do just a really nice thin slice on those mushrooms. I don't like that one. All right, so we're just going to use our knife to run through each cap here. And whenever I'm making a gravy, things come together pretty quickly. So I like to make sure that I do all my chopping up front before I start to assemble. My pan should still be pretty hot from cooking my Schnitzel, so it's not going to need to warm up for too long. Again, we don't want to run the risk of burning those bits that are going to be on the bottom of the pan. We want those in the gravy. Building a pan sauce maximizes the flavor of that gravy, which is important in this dish. Now that I've got my mushrooms all cut, I'm going to get my onion going next. I'm going to take the top of the onion, not the root end, and I'm just going to slice that off, put that aside, and we'll use that in stock at a later date. We actually use all of our onion, mushroom, celery, and carrot trimmings in our stock to make homemade stock every week. Since I didn't have a small onion, I'm going to use half of a large onion. Should end up being about the same. Now that I've cut that in half through the root, I've given it a peel. Next step is to insert my knife, go back to the root without going through, and I went just about a quarter of the way up. And I'm going to continuously make these horizontal cuts back to the root without going through until I've got cuts most of the way up my onion, here, 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 and here. My next step is to go vertical with my knife, and again, back to the root as much as I can, but without slicing through that root. That way all of our layers stay intact. When I do come down, I'm going to have a really nice dice that's easy to work with. All right, now it's time to fire up my pan, and then we'll talk about our other ingredients on deck. So back over to our cast iron skillet. I don't know if Ellie can get a shot, so I'll tip it up. But we've got a lot of good brown bits in the pan here, but no black bits. That's what we would want to stay away from. And we're going to turn our heat on about just slightly over medium. So just right over medium, not in between medium and high. All right, so now we've got some butter, 4 more tablespoons. This isn't necessarily a healthy dish, but it's definitely a dish that's going to stick to the ribs. Definitely some serious comfort food that we're working with today, and it's definitely going to make some people happy. So when we're making a roux and building that in the pan, we need equal parts flour and fat. Our fat of choice today is the butter, so we're going to go ahead and load that in first. We'll get that going. And then the next thing we're going to do is cook our onions and our mushrooms right there in that butter. We'll start with the onions. That way we can get that flavor going on in there. I'm just going to stir that around. Get that butter flavor for the start of our gravy. And for me, I like to build my gravy right in the pan. So I'm going to flavor my butter first with the onions. I'm going to pick up all these brown bits off the bottom with my butter. As you can see, they're coming right up. That's just one thing we love about cast iron skillets. I'm going to get that nice and incorporated. And then I'm going to try and get my onions to be translucent and my mushrooms to just be broken down ever so slightly, maybe with a little bit of brown or color on those as well. So my heat is still at just over medium. I'm going to turn it up just slightly higher since I'm standing right here. And then on deck, I have the same amount of flour ready to go in the pan as I had butter. But again, I just want my mushrooms and my onions to cook down a little bit, release their flavors. And I'm building a good sauce here with all those bits on the bottom of the pan. There we go. We got a nice sizzle going on here. In addition to that, we're going to need 1.5 cups of chicken stock. So we've got our homemade chicken stock that I was just talking about here. And then we're going to need a cup of light white beer or a Hefeweizen or a lager beer. So we're using a German beer here. It's a Pilsner, and that'll work as well. Just don't want something that's too strong. It smells amazing in here. All right, now we've got those mushrooms cooked down a little bit. Our onions are nice and translucent, and they're moving about the pan real nice. And so now we're going to build this roux right inside the pan by sprinkling that over. And then whisking all of that in. And we're looking for that pasty look when we think about a roux, equal parts flour and fat. That roux in the pan is going to help us thicken up our stock and turn this into a pan sauce or a gravy for our spätzle. That looks pretty tasty there. Next step is going to be to add our cold stock. If your stock is cold, it's going to pick up any of those residual brown bits off the bottom of the pan, which we call fond. And then we're going to add in a little bit of our beer. And again, this is a light beer. We want to be able to taste the pork. We want to be able to taste the lemon. And so we have chosen a Pilsner. And so what we're going to do now is cook down for a little bit here. We'll return back over to Amy while our gravy cooks low and slow. I'm going to turn my heat down between low and medium. And what we're looking for is a nice thick but not gloopy consistency where the gravy falls off the spoon and coats it, but also leaves a trail when we do our finger test. So we're going to just let this go low and slow for a little bit. And different wheat beers are going to thicken your gravy in different ways. As we know, our beer has a little bit of wheat in it, so that also is acting as a thickening agent here. I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper to the party. Make sure you have everything in there. That's looking pretty good. So again, I'm going to let this go low and slow for just a couple minutes, and we'll come over here and see how Amy is doing over here with the Spaetzle, and we're going to bring all of this together in just a few minutes for the perfect German meal, just in time for October too, Amy.
I know it. Just a couple of weeks away. All right. I am getting my saute pan on the heat over about medium. You know, you don't want to go too high. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put some butter in the pan, and I'm going to brown the butter, which is something that Chef Amanda was talking about. So butter has milk solids in it. So as you heat butter and the butter melts, if you keep it going, if anybody has done that before, you'll notice that the butter starts to foam up a little, and then you start seeing little white specks develop around the bottom of the pan. That's the milk solids separating out, and those can actually start to brown and toast if you let them. So that is what brown butter is essentially, and it releases this nutty aroma and this nutty flavor, and it completely changes and enhances the flavor of the butter, and therefore anything else that you cook in the butter. So that's essentially what we're going to do. So we don't want to cook this on high, or we'll end up with black or burnt milk solids instead of browned ones. So I'll just go ahead and let this butter melt ever so slowly. And then once we have achieved browned butter, we're going to go ahead and saute our Spaetzle in that. And here is our Spaetzle. There are all of those little noodles once we pulled them out of the water. So they are looking delicious. How's your sauce coming?
Delish.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'm not using a lot of butter, so this browning action is probably going to happen fairly quickly. So I'll just keep this on the heat, and when it starts to happen, I'll go ahead and tip the pan up so that you can see it. And you can start to see the browning now. If you can catch the color of the foam, it's starting to brown just a little bit. That's what we're looking for. So I want to be very careful not to take it much farther than that. And then I'm going to go ahead and add some of my noodles right here. And I'm going to get those sauteing. And you can see the brown bits on the noodles. And that's exactly what we want. And this is as fast as it happens. We are essentially done with the noodles, just like that. Now, I don't know what can be easier. I'm going to go ahead and add just a pinch of salt and a pinch of pepper. Should I go ahead and put these noodles on the plate? Oh, lemon juice.
And a little bit of lemon zest.
Teamwork.
Whoa! That wasn't very good teamwork.
Little fried lemon. Never had that before.
Well, and I like how your Spaetzle has just a little bit of brown color on it.
Mhm.
We know that's going to taste really good.
Those are all those little bits from the browned butter, which is going to be absolutely delicious.
All right.
I'm going to leave you my pasta. We are done, and you can go ahead and plate up.
You want to go ahead and put it on there? I'll grab our
Absolutely.
schnitzel.
So I'm just going to lay that out on the plate. We've got our little thyme garnish, our schnitzel.
And then let's check our gravy. So we said coats the back of a spoon and drips off and leaves a trail. So I think we have a nice successful gravy here.
I'll let you know.
All right. You're going to take one for the team today, huh?
Yes.
A little bit of gravy on top. And I find everybody likes a little bit of extra gravy for that Spaetzle too. And fried thyme garnish on top of that. And then we have some fresh herbs and oregano that we can add as well. You could add parsley if you don't want anything too strong. I've made lemon basil Spaetzle. I've made lemon oregano Spaetzle. So you can really switch that up. Thanksgiving is coming, so sage is a beautiful addition as well. And there we go. We've got our lemon herb Spaetzle on the bottom with our crispy schnitzel on top of that, followed by our mushroom and onion pan sauce or gravy. We hope you enjoyed this edition of AARP Meals for Caregivers and Families, and we'll see you next time.